So when I beat Spider-Man 2 Sunday, October 22nd, 2 days after it came out, I knew that writing up a review or even filming one right away or making a TikTok about it wouldn't be a good idea because I know how I am and I need my thoughts to marinate on this game. And more importantly, I need to 100% it before I make a review. And boy, am I glad I did that. And boy, am I glad I waited. Because man, my opinion on this game has shifted almost completely. So going into this game's release week, I had played or replayed Spider-Man 2 on PS5, the remaster, because I wanted a refresh on the story and I remember them planting many seeds for the sequel. And I also just wanted to re-experience the game in New Game Plus, see how the gadgets are, see how the gameplay is, and see what I didn't like from it, and try to see what I would like for them to improve on in the sequel. And I mean, we all know how good that game is. So when I replayed it to actively look for things I don't like and things I want improved in the sequel, I came to the conclusion that basically the story was near perfect. The open world was fine. The collectible system was a little bloated. But the main issue was that the combat was a little repetitive. That being said, let's finally get into Spider-Man 2 and talk about if it fixes some of these issues or if it worsens them. So right off the bat, I want to speak about the bad in this game, and more specifically, the woke shit I've seen in this game after 100%ing it. And I want to talk about the woke shit right away and get it done as quick as possible in this review because I feel like there's more important things story-wise and gameplay-wise to talk about. And also because I've mentioned it on my TikTok. But the woke shit I've seen after 100%ing this game is, there's quite a bit of it. You see it while playing as Miles during a main mission, which felt like a side quest where you have to help Black Cat go to Paris through a Doctor Strange portal, where she outright says that she has a girlfriend, which, why the fuck you have to do that other than to check that box that you have a lesbian character in your game? There's another side quest as Miles, a whole quest chain, where this white guy is stealing instruments from the black community, and it's just a whole white man bad thing, which is really fucking annoying because I'm just trying to play a Spider-Man game and they make it so evident that this guy's the villain. Another thing is, during Miles, or playing as Miles again, you have to do these missions around your school and you have to help this gay student ask out his boyfriend for prom, which is a real fucking problem because this is a game targeted towards kids, and them doing that, they're just trying to portray this message that that's normal in school these days, which it's really not, and it's borderline brainwashing them doing that. What else? There's zero altercations with cops and zero mention of Spider Cop in this game because of the criticism they received of making the first game pro cop. Now, this is a massive, massive problem because Miles Morales' father is a fucking cop, and he's a big reason why Miles does what he does. So them doing that makes no sense at all. They bought into the cops bad or police brutality is so common thing to the point where they took out cops in the game and without even realizing the importance of cops in Miles's personal life and how that's a driving force for their so beloved Miles Morales character. It's really stupid, and they really messed up on their part for that. Now, of course, if you've been following the drama around this game, you've probably seen the Puerto Rican flag shit, where in Miles' house they actually accidentally put the Cuban flag instead of the Puerto Rican flag. What the fuck? And in the Spanish version of this game, through the subtitles or through the dialogue, sorry, they use gender-neutral pronouns to refer to certain things, which is a real fucking issue because, like, why the fuck would you do that? Just, like, why are you pandering to that? The Spanish people playing this game probably just want to play a Spider-Man game. You don't have to secretly put this shit into it. So it's just frustrating for everyone. And now those Spanish people are probably gonna look at North American people and with a bad view because of that. Like, why the fuck you put that in our Spider-Man game? It gives us a bad image. Okay, with the woke shit out of the way, let's finally get into gameplay and story related shit that was kind of bad. So first, right off the bat, playing as Haley in that side quest was really dumb. I think everyone can agree on that. And I'm not even gonna get too into that because just playing as Haley makes no sense, and that alone should say a lot. Another bad thing I wanted to mention was the fact that stopping car chases has been reduced down to simply clicking the square button on your controller and then proceeding to put the controller down and watch a 15-second cutscene, because we live in a day and age where gaming has to be simplified and you can't do shit on your own. Whereas in the first game, there was a random button prompt that you had to click. It was random almost every single time, I believe. And if you screwed that up or you hit a wrong button, you felt bad. You as a player actually felt bad for like not succeeding in stopping that car crash. So there was like some impact of it. So you had to be alert at which button you had to click. In this game, it's always square, and it's always just clicking square and watching a cutscene. It's really stupid and it's not engaging at all. Now, this game's combat has a really heavy emphasis on aerial combat. It really encourages you to boot your enemies up into the air and start beating them up. And why do I say it encourages that? Because throughout some of the skill trees, it says that dealing damage in the air causes more damage, and just the fact that you have an item called the upshot, which literally boosts them in the air, cements that fact. Now, why did they want to have aerial combat be such a big part of this game? I don't know. To me, it seems like a cheap way to differentiate this game with the last game, because, oh, look, in this game, you're fighting them in the air and you're doing more damage. It's like, what the fuck? Why? But I have to say, once you do get used to the aerial combat and develop your own combos, it does kind of feel satisfying, but it's still weird that they want you to fight in the air so fucking badly. Another thing I want to talk about is the fact that they took out all the gadgets in the R1 menu and replaced it with 4 gadgets: a ricochet, one that groups them up, a sonic blast that's only used on the venom enemies, and the upshot, which are all used for combat, unlike the other game where some of them were used for stealth or used for main missions, like when you're crawling through a building and you have to use the electric one on the electric panels. Now it's just reduced to using those 4 gadgets for combat and combat alone. Now, another ability you have when you're doing stealth in this game is creating web lines. So you're able to have some verticality throughout your stealth segment or stealth arena. And stuff like that. And you're also able to do double takedowns in this game, but you only unlock it later. Stuff like that is amazing, but the thing is, this game doesn't have many stealth segments, so using those amazing abilities was just rendered useless for me. It's another reason why I'm looking forward to New Game Plus, because I'm looking forward to being able to use those abilities from the start of the game, even though there isn't many stealth segments to begin with. In this game, there's literally no reason to unlock suits other than pure cosmetic reasons, considering they took out all the unique suit abilities and have just made suits pure skins that you want to use, which is kind of stupid because the suit abilities in the first game were amazing and they were super fun to use and screw around with on your first playthrough. Of course, you can't change the time of day. You can't change how the symbiote looked while you're swinging around the city. It always has the white anti-venom look. There's no Stan Lee cameo. There's a lot of glitches in this game. My game crashed once. There was a segment where, you have the button prompt on the screen. You have to click it because the game wants to showcase to you in a really shitty way that you just unlocked a new ability. So I would click this button prompt and nothing would happen. my game would just stay there. I was clicking the button and my game was just, it was as if nothing happened. I tried reconnecting my controller, disconnecting it, turning off my PlayStation, resetting it. But the only fix I found for that was spamming the buttons before the prompt appeared on the screen. It kind of fixed it. Fast travel was kind of glitched. You would fast travel, and sometimes it would just put you inside a building. I had this glitch where Spider-Man became a fucking white cube on the ground, and I was swinging around with that, which was actually followed by a game crash, my only game crash. When you're fighting bosses and you know, sometimes you hit enemies so hard that they like go flying. If you're fighting bosses and you hit them hard enough, and sometimes they go flying off the arena, like the little boss arena, and that arena is actually inaccessible to the player. So you have to wait until they get back into the arena to start fighting them again. The problem with that is the bosses you fight in this game are usually big brute types who walk super fucking slow. So you have to wait a good 10 seconds for them to walk back into the arena just for you to fight them again, for you to boot them out of the arena and wait for them to walk back. It was really annoying and really frustrating. Now let's talk about story-related stuff that I didn't like, and let's start off by mentioning that playing as Venom had no purpose narratively. It made no sense to play as Venom. It felt like a cheap excuse for them to spice up the gameplay by making you play as essentially big Spider-Man who doesn't swing and does big damage. What the fuck were they thinking? It made no sense. Actually, they knew what they were thinking. They know who their audience is. They know it's kids on TikTok who just like the spectacle. So for them, that was maybe a win. But in the grand scheme of things, playing as Venom made no sense. There was no build-up to it. If you want to have the villain's perspective on a game, usually what they would do is make you spend time with the villain through cutscenes alone, and just to see what he's going through personally, and lead that as build-up for playing as the villain. In this game, every time you see Harry Osborn, it's through Peter Parker. So there's no build-up to it. And then when you play as Venom, it's just like, what the fuck? What is this for? Now, on the topic of Venom, the symbiote stuff towards the end of the game gets way too out of hand. You fight Mary Jane, who turns into Scream, another symbiote. In a matter of a day, all the symbiote shit goes around the city, and everyone starts turning into like little symbiote guys, goons. It just gets way too out of hand. You know, when I first started playing this game and I got to the point where you're playing as Peter Parker, meeting Harry Osborn for the first time after a couple years, and you're going into the school, reliving flashbacks of when they were in high school, I kind of liked it at first because I felt like it was leading up to something important towards the end of the game, which it does lead to something important towards the end of the game. But the thing is, those gameplay segments where you're playing as Peter Parker with Harry Osborn doesn't do enough to make me feel an emotional attachment towards Harry the same way I felt an emotional attachment towards Otto in the first game. Now, why is that the case? I don't know. Maybe it's because Harry Osborn wasn't in the first game and we had to see him more for him to have more of an emotional resonance with the player when he turns to Venom, and for us to feel sad. In this game, when you're fighting Venom at the football field, I felt nothing compared to how I felt fighting Otto on the side of a skyscraper in the first game. It's kind of weird because Peter Parker is supposed to have more of an emotional attachment towards Harry Osborn than he is for Otto in general. And I don't like comparing this game to other Spider-Man stories, but you're kind of forced to do that. In this game's context, I didn't feel anything towards Harry, even given those missions towards the beginning of the game. Now, my friend who felt the same way as me mentioned that if there were lab-type missions in this game similar to the first games, maybe it would have helped the player build a more emotional attachment. I'm saying that too much towards Harry, but this game doesn't do that. You get the job, or Peter Parker gets the job at the Emily May Foundation, and that's it. He doesn't go back. There's no lab missions there. Maybe doing those lab missions would have helped cement more of an attachment towards Harry Osborn, which would have resulted in more, which would have resulted in the player feeling more sad fighting Venom at the end of the game. But instead, we don't get those lab missions because people had criticism for them in the first game, and also because those lab missions were probably taken out of the game for us to play as Miles. Not to mention that the final boss in this game is played as Miles fighting Venom, which is really fucking stupid. It's something that no one is talking about. It's something I keep forgetting, but every time I remember it, it pisses me off even more. And their way of making it so Peter Parker defeats Venom is through quick time events, when in reality that should have been its own boss fight. Which you can make the argument that yes, it was its own boss fight, but the boss fight technically ended with Miles fighting Venom, which is awful. So more story notes or more story things that I didn't like. They didn't actually explain how Peter can afford the house, considering he was incredibly broke in the first game, getting evicted and all that shit. Now, the last story beat that I have an issue with, that I want to talk about, was the fact that, or the way they handled the Lizard in this game's context, considering having Otto, someone who wants to heal the world, and having Venom, or Harry Osborn and Norman Osborn, having their own vision of healing the world. Now, in this game, and in the previous one, Otto wanted to heal the world through his cybernetics because he was born with a disease. In this game, Harry Osborn wants to do the same thing because he was born with a disease. The Lizard in this game losing his arm, not because he was born with it, but because he got it severed off due to the symbiote, and him wanting a new one in a world where you have two people arguably trying to do a good thing in healing the world. Him getting a new arm through science comes across as selfish to me, considering Otto and Harry, their driving forces for healing the world lead to them being born with something, not losing something throughout their life. Now, of course, you can make the argument that that was also in the comics, Dr. Connors losing his arm in an accident and getting a new one through science. But in this game's context, like I mentioned before, with the whole heal the world thing and how those two villains, Dr. Octopus and Harry Osborn and Norman, have somewhat redeeming qualities because they want to heal the world, which is kind of a good thing. For Dr. Connors to get a new arm through science because he lost it in an accident and wasn't born with no arm comes across as super selfish, and it takes away the redeeming quality that the Lizard has. Now, finally, let's talk about the good things in this game. But obviously, we're going to start off with the gameplay-related things and get to story later. The first thing I want to talk about gameplay-wise that I really liked is the web wings. The web wings are such a good addition to the game. In fact, they know it's such a good addition to the game because they make you start off by swinging on a bridge. And if you know anything about the first game, when you're swinging on a bridge or something like it, where there's not a lot of room to hook onto, it can be fucking brutal. So them purposely making you swing on the bridge to show you the later importance of the web wings is both clever, but it's also kind of a cheap way to show you how important the web wings are. Either way, the web wings are amazing. Now, in addition to the web wings, you actually have the ability to boost yourself forward while swinging and boost yourself upwards while swinging with the L1X and L1 triangle abilities, which make swinging much more enjoyable, even though this game's traversal system is already near perfect. It just makes it even better, and at least the swinging is improved in this game. Somehow they managed to improve it. Talking about the side quests or the side content in this game, it was actually decent. But the thing that stood out to me the most was the fact that every single Kraven base was different from each other. Every single Prowler hideout was different from each other. Every single little piece of side content was different from each other. It wasn't just go there, you're doing a Kraven base, you know what you're doing, do the same thing that you did before. It was actually different. You had to kind of use your brain in different ways, which is good. It changes up the gameplay. It makes it so it's not repetitive, which is something a lot of people had an issue with in the first game. Now, the L1 abilities, the Iron Arms and the Symbiote abilities are both really, really good and really fun. Of course, some of them boost your enemies into the air because of this heavy emphasis on aerial combat, but if you don't want to do that, you have a bunch of fun options for grounded combat. And I found myself using the Symbiote abilities more than the Iron Arm abilities. And having those abilities actually changes up the gameplay and it adds more variety and makes it less stale, which is something I actually had an issue with in the first game, as I mentioned before. So that's good. Now, finally, let's get into the story-related things I kind of liked. And I'm just going to start off by saying the middle portion of this game, from playing as Mary Jane the first time through to getting the symbiote removed, is near perfect. The way they handled the symbiote and Peter getting the symbiote is amazing because it establishes how much of a threat Kraven is, which is something I had an issue with because this game's trailer footage showed Kraven as being very tech-based and having all this technology at his disposal. But they more than make up for it in the fact that he's a threat. He's a major, major threat. He kills Peter Parker. So it makes up for the fact that he uses technology, which, in essence, completely goes against what Kraven is. But at least they make him a fucking threat. So there's that. Not to mention the fact that he killed all the other villains of the first game, which is a pretty cool addition. Now, I had mentioned the Mary Jane segment, and this game's Mary Jane segments are actually pretty fun. A lot of people like to shit on them. I like to shit on them in the first game, but in this game, in this game's context, I'll be the first to admit it that they're kind of fun. And each time you play as her, you get a slightly altered version of the gun, starting from just a simple taser to a taser that shoots web shooters. And I mean, it's kind of fun, but she does feel super OP and makes Spider-Man look like a total bitch. Now, what they do and what they make blatantly obvious is the fact that every time you play as Mary Jane, it's followed by some of the best moments in the game story-wise. They do that on purpose because, obviously, if you don't like to play as Mary Jane, at least you'll have something cool to look forward to. Before, I had mentioned that the middle portion of this game is my favorite. And what they do in this middle portion of the game when you do get the symbiote is they make you swing around the city at night when it's raining with the symbiote. It's obviously done on purpose. And they actually have a different song that plays while you're swinging throughout this segment, which is really, really cool. It's a really good song, and you can actually change it in the menu once the game's done to play that song every time you want to swing. And I thought that was a really good element. Now, on the topic of music, they take from God of War, actually. They do the giving a character a certain theme. For example, they give Harry Osborn his certain song that plays, and they slightly alter that version of the song when he becomes Venom. So at first when you meet Harry, it's a kind of sweeter version of that song, but then when he slowly turns into Venom, that same song is just turned darker. It's something that God of War did with Kratos, something that they did with Atreus. It's something they did with the villains in that game, and it's a really smart way to show how your characters are changing. Some people will say it's a cheap way because you're using the same song and you're just slightly altering it, but I think it's a very creative way, so good on them. Before, I mentioned that Kraven being tech-based was an issue I had going into this game, but now I want to address the main issue I had going into this game, and it was the fact that we're going to be playing as Miles Morales, and I was very skeptical on the split in gameplay, playing as Miles and Peter. And this game actually handles it very well, and I'm very thankful because on one hand, you have Miles' story, which is very, very, very separate from Peter's story. When you're playing as Peter, which, by the way, you play as him like 80% of the time, which is very good, his story feels so interlinked with him and has absolutely nothing to do with Miles. It's amazing because it also cements the fact that Miles in this game is treated like a pure sidekick, only called upon by Peter when he's absolutely needed. It's good, and to me, it shows that Miles is just a sidekick. Now, when they do manage to interlink Peter and Miles' story towards the end of the game, which that was inevitably going to happen, they do so in a very smooth way, which makes this game's version of Miles Morales kind of likable. And it's something that I've been waiting to see for a while, considering I fucking hate Miles Morales in every iteration of him. What I mean by that is Miles' maturity towards somewhat forgiving Lee led to them going into Peter and activating the anti-venom. So, of course, without Miles being mature, you wouldn't have anti-venom and venom wouldn't have been stopped. So, thank you for making Miles Morales somewhat likable, I guess. Now, on the topic of Miles Morales, I just quickly wanted to mention the fact that with him and his story arc, they do the very stereotypical revenge is bad plot with him, but it's actually done better than it is done in The Last of Us 2. So, fuck you, Naughty Dog. Insomniac managed to do it with a much shittier character and made it kind of feel rewarding through the game as a whole, story-wise. So I wanted to end talking about the story-related elements that I liked by mentioning the fact that, yeah, playing as Venom made no sense narratively and made no fucking sense in general. At least they made it so Venom is the one who kills Kraven and gets him what he wants, which is to die a warrior. Considering Harry Osborn Venom and Kraven are both dying from a disease. One of them chooses to live his remaining days as a ruthless psycho killer, while the other one doesn't and is forced to through the symbiote. So Kraven finally getting what he wants through someone just like him is kind of poetic, and it's done on purpose, and it's a very clever way of ending Kraven's story. He finally got what he deserved through someone just like him, but someone who doesn't choose to do this. So now I'll finally get to my final thoughts about this game. And what I just want to say is I am so glad I replayed the first one before playing this one, because it helped me lower my standards even more for this game, considering how well the story is told in the first game. So me going into this game with somewhat low standards kind of helped, and it made it so I'm not pissed off that this game turned out the way it did. But at the end of the day, recommending this game is going to be so difficult, considering the story is going to be very hit or miss with people. The gameplay is good for the most part. The swinging is improved, but you can't swing at night with the symbiote suit, which is something it's something I always go back to in Spider-Man Remastered. I always go back to that game and just swing around the city, change the time of day, and screw around. In this game, you can't do that. So to me and to a lot of other people, that is a major factor. But you can't even do that in this game. All in all, I don't think this game is a worthy sequel or a worthy contender to Spider-Man PS4. The story is, like I said before, it's very hit or miss. It's a game that has its side content plagued by woke shit and pandering to audiences that don't exist. All that stuff could have easily been removed, including Miles' part. Could have easily been removed and added the Green Goblin as a final boss and set up Kraven and Venom towards the middle portion of the game. Because the first game sets up Green Goblin very, very subtly. But now we're going to have to wait for a third game, which probably is going to be the same thing, very hit or miss. This is a game with a very, very predictable story that goes in almost any way possible you think it's going to go. Takes no risks compared to the first game. And I didn't even mention before that the game has a fast travel system, which is probably going to be the industry standard in 5 years. But the thing is, this game does not need a fast travel system, but it has one that is super, super fucking good. And maybe, I mentioned before that this game is not a true next-gen experience, but the fast travel does actually use up the PS5's capabilities, so there is that. But that shouldn't be a driving force for buying this game. And honestly, I can't even name a single driving force. I can't even name a single thing for someone to buy this game, because the story is not as good. The gameplay is not much better. The swinging is improved, but you can't even swing at night with the black suit in the rain. You can't even change that as of now. I honestly, like I said before, recommending this game is super, super difficult. Maybe when DLC comes out or further updates, it'll be easier. As of now, I don't recommend this game. It's not worth full price. Unless you're a super big Spider-Man fan or a big fan of the first game and you want to see how the story continues. This game's story going into the future is just going to be Peter Parker and Miles Morales fought a symbiote and lived, and so did the villain, and New York kind of got destroyed. That's all that happened. There was no consequences. There was no characters dying. Harry Osborn should have died. But the way they set up the third game, and the fact that they're more likely gonna do the Green Goblin. But at the same time, Peter Parker is retiring from Spider-Man. Makes no sense. We're gonna have to see where they go. What I will say though is that this game is a 90s Spider-Man fans' wet dream of a video game. And the fact that they use the symbiote stuff and Venom so frequent and it gets so hectic towards the end. I mean, if you like that shit, you'll love this game. But you might have to dumb yourself down with the Miles Morales stuff. And then maybe, only then, will you appreciate this game. So finally, is this game Game of the Year? No. Does Game of the Year even matter? Hell no. Has Game of the Year ever mattered? Fuck no. So to everyone who was saying that this game was going to be Game of the Year before it even came out, you look so ridiculous right now. Not only that, but so many great games have come out this year. So people even considering this game as Game of the Year is just very disrespectful to some amazing games out there. And this game is just another example of people setting super high expectations for video games. And that's only going to cause more and more issues, considering we have a very big release coming out soon in the next couple of years. So set your expectations at a very reasonable state. And yeah, take care.